Remington used to sell I believe they called it a mid-range 44 Magnum load, and it consisted of a lead semi-wide cutter loaded to 1,000 feet per second. That's a lead semi-wide cutter right there, and it's loaded to about 1,000 feet per second. And that's another one. But I haven't been able to find a factory load like that. And I looked up Remington, looked on the Remington website, and they no longer offer it. I looked on the Federal website, and they don't offer it. And I looked at Buffalo Bore and Underwood Ammo, and neither of them sell anything like that. And in fact, I haven't been able to find any reference to a factory load like that ever being available, but I remember that it was available. In fact, back in probably the early to mid 90s, I believe I read an article about it, which is why I bought a box of this ammo, because I bought sometime in the 90s, I bought a brand new Ruger Super Blackhawk 44 Magnum, and I bought a box of that ammo at the same time. I mean, this was not my first 44 Magnum. I'd had several 44 Magnums, and I already reloaded 44 Magnum, but I just wanted to try a box of this 1,000 foot per second ammo because it caught my interest, and I wanted to try it and, you know, see how it shot and everything. So I bought it, and I think that was the first ammo I fired through that new Super Blackhawk. And it's a good load. And looking around on the internet, now I found several hand loading recipes for something like that. So that's still a popular concept among hand loaders. And in fact, I've done it for years. Before I ever even bought any of the mid-range factory ammo, I was loading that kind of bullet, basically a Keith bullet, cast bullet, over 7 grains of bullseye for a load similar to that. And I've used several different fast powders for that type of load. These, if I remember correctly, are loaded over a charge of green dot for about that velocity, about 1,000 feet per second. And it's a very useful load. It's an easy to shoot load, and it's a load that goes really well with these compact frame 44 Magnums. And this one is a tracker, Taurus tracker, 5-shot 44 Magnum, and it's on upper medium size frame instead of a large frame like most 44 Magnums are. This is like about the same size as a Smith & Wesson L frame or a Ruger GP100, and it weighs right at about 34 ounces. And this one is also a Taurus, and I've had this tracker for several years, and I've had this one for a few years. And most of the time when I see a reference to this, most people don't call it a tracker. But it's on the tracker frame, except it's a fixed sight version of the tracker frame. And 2.5-inch barrel or something like that. And I read an article about this, and a lot of good comments about it from people who owned these. And then I ran across one. I started looking around, and actually I think that the article that I read was about a Rossi version, which it's, you know, Taurus owns Rossi. And I think what was happening is Rossi was building this one, and then when Taurus bought Rossi out, they kind of inherited that. And they built a few of them with the Taurus name on it, which this is, but then they discontinued it. So, even though it is the same size frame, and I guess it uses the same internals and everything, I don't know if you would call that a tracker or not. Doesn't matter anyway. But the comments I was reading about this one were very favorable, and so when I happened to run across one, I had to have it. And I've been quite pleased with it. And I've been reading lately, since the Tracker 44 has been out for quite a few years now. And I've had this one for several years, as I said. And there are quite a few people out there who have had 44 Magnum trackers for several years. And when they first came out, most people said, you know, those won't hold up. But now people who have had them for several years say, yeah, they really do hold up. And obviously they're not for 44 Magnum plus P type loads, but that the standard 44 Magnum load of a 240 grain bullet at about 1200 feet per second, these are fine with it for normal use. You know, I mean, if you want something to go out, even with that load, go out and shoot 100 rounds a week or something like that, it'll wear out sooner than you would hope, probably. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't want to take a chance on it either. It's just, to me, it's a packing revolver. It's one to shoot some, and, you know, use the bigger guns for more extensive shooting. But with that in mind, it does hold up well. It holds up a lot better than one would expect of such a lightweight 44 Magnum. And this one, I do shoot some Magnums in. This one, now, I don't think I've ever fired a full power 44 Magnum in it. I think of this one more as a 44 special that I can load up, you know, hot 44 special type loads in 44 Magnum brass, which is what the mid-range load is all about anyway. So this kind of load is perfect for this revolver. Or like this in the summertime. This is my summertime carry load in this revolver. 4 rounds of a load like that, plus a shot load for rattlesnakes and whatnot. So I wish somebody would bring back that type of load. In looking around, I found some cowboy action loads in 44 Magnum, and they are a 200 grain bullet at a little bit over 700 feet per second. And you know, if you didn't have anything better, I guess that you could make do with that. But that's 44 special. That's you know, regular standard 44 special type loads or less. 44 special loads, the classic 44 special load was a 246 grain round nose bullet at about 650 to 700 feet per second, and that's pretty light. But a 240 grain semi-wide cutter at, I'm going to say 850 to 1000 feet per second. That's a very useful load. That puts it right in the range of the original 45 Lone Coat load. So having said all that, let's go try some of these. This is a new load I haven't tried before, but it should do about the same thing as this green dot load or the 7 grains of bullseye load I used to use. But I'm just trying a different powder. And what this is 240 grain semi-wide cutter over, I think it was about 7.5 grains of Solo 1000. So let's go try it in the tracker and see how that shoots. Now these holsters, by the way, this holster is exactly like the holster other than the color. Exactly like the holster I used to carry my Ruger Speed 6 357 Magnum in, medium frame 357. And that was a slightly smaller frame than the GP100. And I have one of these in brown. And I carried that Speed 6 for years in that. But this fits it perfectly. And this holster this is the holster that I used to carry my 4-inch barreled Smith & Wesson end-frame revolvers in, model 29s and 629s, which I had a lot of bad luck with those revolvers, and I finally gave up on them because they just didn't hold up well. So anyway, this was the holster that I carried those in, and it worked well for an end frame the way it originally was. But what I did was I stitched it up. I added another line of stitching here to tighten it up, and also closed up the toe, which was, this was just a flap that was open. So I closed that up. Then I soaked it in water and let it dry so it would shrink. And once I did that, I put the tracker in it and let it form fit to it. So it works well for that. So let's go shoot it and see how well it does. That feels really good. Let's try double action. I only loaded a few rounds of that to test it. So I like the way it feels. That feels like about 1,000 feet per second. It feels similar to other loads I put up with different powders, like Green Dot or Bullseye, for the same velocity level. So that's pretty good. So now I'll go ahead and load some more of those. That was 7.5 grains of Solo 1000 with actually it's a bevel base semi-wide cutter, no gas check. But I have a couple of molds that cast similar bullets too. These are store-bought bullets, but it'll work just as well with the home cast bullets, if not better. And Like I said, 7.5 grains of Solo 1000, which is a 1cc dipper. So, perfect. Easy to load. Doesn't use a lot of powder. Good power level.